so om by te kom.
Ja,
Om aan te sluit, ekskuus.
ja, dis reg.
Woordkeuse.
Goeienaand almal.
Goeienaand. Dis Pieter, ja.
Yes.
4. Ja.
Gaan dit Louis.
Gaan ook jouself bly te kies.
Goeienaand,
Nie
goeienaand.
daar nie. Kom eens so 'n minuut, ek's nou terug.
Okay.
Dit is nie so stukkie om vanaand deel te gaan nie.
Hierdie is hier raak dit interessant, hoor.
Dis waar die tegnies begin.
Dis ja,
Die fisika klasse van hoërskool kom terug.
Okay. Jy's vir wie het almal wetenskap op skool gehad het, maar nou.
Ja nee. Dit kom al klaar terug. Natuurlik kan ons later op soos ons deel gaan 'n bietjie meer as wetenskap op hoërskool deel gaan. As om net weet van 'n skakelaar, battery en 'n gloeilamp.
Hierdie is omtrent standaard 8. So hoe verder dit gaan, hoe meer raak dit seker na matriek se kant.
Ons het 'n persoon wat sê invalid invite. Maar dit vir my gewerk. Die groep.
Skus, ek gaan nou blond klink. Waar sê hy vir jou dit?
WhatsApp?
Dat ek net
WhatsApp.
op WhatsApp. Okay.
Anders.
Okay, kyk ons.
So from my meeting invite en fit from dalk deel as dit kan help.
Klaar gedoen?
Ek bedoel soos die meeting code en kode as hy daardeur wil gaan.
Eens kyk of hy reg kom.
Hæ? So nou weer sukkel het ek dit op my klipbord.
Ryan, wil jy nie die details sommer net daar op die WhatsApp groepie
Ja.
gooi nie? Jy?
Ja.
Asseblief, dankie. Caitlin, I'm so glad you are joining us. It sucks to be the only lady here.
Thanks. I was actually online on Tuesday, just under Kieran's.
Oh, okay. Well, it's still good to have you here and to hear another female voice.
Thank you.
Okay, julle begin.
Okay, Hannes kan nie inkom nie. Hy sê ons moet aangaan. Hy sal die recording volg later. Peer, ek weet nie of jy daar in die agtergrond van Hannes wil help nie.
Okay, so wag net so 'n bietjie.
Weer goeienaand julle almal.
Soos 'n mens so. Vernon.
Hallo Vernon.
Hallo.
Hallo Vernon.
Hallo.
Hallo Vernon, hoe gaan dit? Goed, dankie self. Goed.
Luister saam vanaand.
Ja, lekker, dankie. Ja.
Goeienaand Vernon, Pierre hier. Ek luister ook net vanaand hoor.
Okay, wil julle begin ook?
Louis, ek dink jy kan maar begin. Ons rekord in elk geval. En
Ja.
Hannes moet boot en allerhande tricks doen. So,
Right.
Okay.
Hoe sit 'n mens die kamera nou af? Hier, so ek sien streaming webcam. Nou nie te veel. Blur. Ja.
Langs waar jy geshare het, Louis, is daar mic en langs dit is daar kamera.
Ja, ek het hom daarso. Soek hom net op die kamera. Ja, klik net op die kamera.
Awesome.
So, okay, jy sien nie meer die kamera nie. En dan het ek nou die so sien julle die skerm.
Ja, ek
Daarso.
sien jou by presentasie, dis korrek, ja.
Ja, okay. So we have, is everybody present? I've seen there's 5 people, or is it 4 people, students? So. Okay, kan maar begin.
ja, Louis, ek dink jy kan maar begin. Ons rekord dit. So,
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Louis de Wet, the 6 Kilo. I've been for a member of Pretoria Amateur Radio Club for quite a number of years. And there's my Gmail address if you want to ask some questions. So we're going to start first delving into the world of atoms. I'm not happy with some of the parts of the text, and it says atoms and electrons, but I've changed it to atoms, protons, neutrons, and electrons. So let's start. You'll see it's more or less extracted from the text, but not word by word. It is trying to get the crux of each paragraph or important sentences. And I presume Henry can make this available for the students if they want to use it. Is that true? Yeah, anyway, so we'll discuss it later. Right, let's look at matter. So matter includes any solid objects. Rock, wood, liquids, water, any type of liquid, gases, air. There are millions and millions of different types of solid objects. If you just start thinking about it, it will take you a long time to you write up quite a lot of solid objects, which are part of our cosmos. And all matter consists, of course, of atoms, which we actually cannot see. We don't really know how atoms look, and there have been various models throughout the ages of how atoms look. So atoms consist of various subatomic particles, which number one includes a small, extremely small external nucleus, which we'll talk about a bit later, and which is then surrounded by a cloud of electrons, and we'll also talk about that a bit. Is you cannot actually see electrons moving around the nucleus of an atom. It's so quick, and there's a theory that says you cannot measure the speed and position, and it's called Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You cannot measure these things simultaneously. And anyway, you cannot measure it. So, let me just hide this. No, okay. Electrons are not simple particles like miniature planets. Instead, they are, and as we say, it's smeared out in the space around the nucleus so that they form clouds around the atomic nuclei. But the reason they say it's smeared out is just to simplify it, just because we can't actually see it. We just see it. Well, we see nothing. We just theorize that it's actually smeared out. Okay, let's look at the nucleus. Consists of 1 or 2 or more protons accompanied by the same number of neutrons, depending on the element and its atomic number. Okay, this is not in your text, but I'm going to explain a little bit more about that. Protons are positively charged particles, while neutrons are uncharged, or they're electrically neutral. Then, of course, the overall or net charge of the nucleus is always positive, because the positive charge of the protons outweigh the neutral charges of the neutrons. That's obvious. And then electrons are negatively charged, and then since opposite charges attract, positive attracts negative, the negatively charged electrons are attracted to the positively charged nucleus. It makes that the electrons stay close to the nucleus. So there's also this thing about why don't electrons just crash into the nucleus of the atom, and that we need to think about a little bit. And when you come, we talk again, we can talk about that more, but go and think about why don't electrons just crash into the nucleus of an atom? Is it their momentum, or what is it? Because they attract each other. Remember then, very important, opposite charges attract, and like charges repel. So positive and negative attract each other, but positive and positive repel, and negative repel. Very simple. Here's my favorite table. I've got a shirt of a periodic table, and it says there, I wear this shirt periodically. I wear it at work quite a lot. So let's look right there in group 1A, left upper, there's hydrogen. So that's the simplest element there is. And it's got one proton only. But if you see, there's the mass 1.0079. It's not precisely 1, the atomic mass, because there's one proton, and then there's also the mass of electrons and some other subatomic particles. If you go right over to group 8A, you'll see there's helium, it's He, the green column. It's got 2 protons, but the mass is then 4. So why is that? So it's got 2 protons and 2 neutrons, which should make a mass of close to 4, but it's 4.0025. So that includes the mass of electrons and other particles. When you go to lithium, back here in group 1A, that's your alkaline earth elements. Lithium is 3, but the mass is 6.9. So there are things in lithium that actually make it quite a bit heavier. Beryllium should be more or less 8, but it's 9. And then you go through. So all atoms which are neutral or not isotopes have the same number of protons and neutrons. We don't need to know more about this. This is not a chemistry lecture. But yes, so here's the atom, just a very simplified view of an atom. We've got the atomic nucleus there, and we'll talk about it right now. There's the nucleus in the atom consisting of equal numbers of protons and neutrons. You've heard that we use the word isotope. Isotope is when there are not the same numbers of protons or neutrons, but that's the different matter we don't want to talk about now. And there's the electrons moving in discrete bands around the atom. We're going to talk sometime in the future about semiconductors, and I'll present that lecture to you again. And then we'll talk a bit more about these electrons. So the electrons got a negative charge, while in the atom, the protons have a positive charge, and the neutron, obviously, no charge. Right, so let's look at electromagnetic and nuclear forces. So protons and neutrons are packed tightly into a very small nucleus of an atom. I don't think we can really realize how small it is. Protons are positively charged, and since likely charges repel each other, that's called the electromagnetic force. Protons are under immense pressure to get away from each other. So if you have got this nucleus packed with a lot of protons, the possibility that the nucleus will just explode and all protons moving away from each other is there. But there's another force countering this electromagnetic force to such an extent that it's not possible. So it actually protects the nucleus. So the strong nuclear force, as we know it, is the powerhouse that overcomes that urge for the nucleus to fly apart. The strong nuclear force is stronger at very short distances, and that's very important. Characteristic of an atomic nucleus, and it's very much stronger than a repulsive electromagnetic force between the positively charged protons. So if this nuclear force would all of a sudden collapse, it will be absolutely disastrous for actually the whole universe, because the whole universe will just collapse if you think about the implications of that. So and I've asked this question, is there really a nuclear force? And is it really stronger than a repelling force? And the answer is yes, it's significantly stronger, but there's a catch. First off, the strength, and this only works at very short distances, the nuclear force. The strong nuclear force is roughly 100 times stronger than electromagnetism, and this is why it can easily pin protons together despite the intense electrical repulsion. And now the range, and that's where the catch is. While magnetism can act over infinite distances, even between planets or two maggots, the nuclear force is extremely short range. It only works if the protons and neutrons are practically touching, and that's within a distance of 10 to the minus 15 meters. So it's subatomically, microscopically small. And that's only when this nuclear force works. And it's actually good so for us, if you think that. Right, let's look at conductors. We'll have some questions after the session. Right, so materials in which electrons can move freely conduct electricity and is called conductors. So the characteristics of conductors: electrons can move freely because they are not strongly bound to the nuclei. And we're going to talk about this also later when we look at semiconductors. And electrons are free to move around in material, in things like metal and so on, or any type of conductor, as long as other electrons replace them when they move. So we talk about the Hall effect and the replacement of electrons. So the moment the electron moves from one atom to another, there's always another one that replaces it. Now, typical conductor materials include copper, aluminium, iron, salt water, and gold. And obviously, when you take distilled water, there's no conduction in that material, in the distilled water. So here we've got a couple of conductors. You can see there's the insulator outside, there's copper wire, aluminium, silver, and those type of materials which are good in conductors. And they all don't have the same amount of conductivity potential. And I wanted to put in some more, but I thought, we can talk about it later, comparing the different amounts of conductivity and resistivity between different conductors, because that is also very important. Okay, you'll see here at the bottom of each page, that corresponds to the page number of your notes. Okay, let's look at insulators. An electrical insulator is a material whose electrons do not flow freely, and therefore make it very hard to conduct an electrical current under the influence of an electric field. So if you put an electric current into into an insulator, it would not flow. The electrons that you put in extra will just accumulate in that area where you've put it into the, or attempted to put it into the conductor. Here's some typical insulators: rubber, glass, oil, diamonds. It's interesting, but diamond and carbon, they are called allotropes of each other. They are made of carbon, both of it. But a normal carbon is to an extent more conductive than diamond. And there are different reasons for that. So other ones are also plastic, wood, and you can think of a lot of insulators. They've got some examples of these big power lines. They've got glass and ceramic insulators that isolate hundreds and thousands of volts from each other. And here's a close-up of a ceramic insulator. There's obviously plastic and other materials like mica and so on. So if a charge is transferred to its insulator, so if you put a high voltage on the insulator at a given location, the excess charge will remain at that initial location of charging, so it won't move away. The particles of the insulator do not permit the free flow of electrons, so subsequently charge is seldomly distributed even across the surface of an insulator. So you can do whatever you want. there's one thing that I've thought about is, and we'll talk about the bands theory. If you want to go and look up in the meantime, go and take a look at what is the band theory of insulators, conductors, and semiconductors, because we'll talk about that again. Then you'll see that the band theory clearly distinguishes between these three types of materials, and they talk there about the forbidden band, and that's where these types of materials are distinguished from each other. But it explains, if you want to go and read, you're most welcome. So typical insulator materials are, of course, mica, porcelain, all types of plastics and glass. And you've got a big ceramic insulator that this guy is busy working with. And here's another one. Right, let's look at electric current. When a material is conducting electricity, it means that electric current can flow through the material. And the definition, an electric current is a flow of charge, and charge carriers are, of course, electrons that move through a conductor. So this is more or less as it is in the text, but I just took out, as I said, the most important points. Flowing of a charge in a relative constant direction causes an electric current in a conductor. That's obvious. Charge carriers are particles that carry charge, and obviously they are electrons. In electric circuits, these charge carriers are carried by moving electrons in a wire. All right, that makes sense. The size of electric current is expressed in amperes, named after the French physicist André Marie Ampère. So the abbreviation for the electric current is A, a capital letter A, and we also refer to as amps or amperes. So the symbol I is used for current in mathematical formulas. So we don't use A. A is the name, and I is the mathematical unit that we use, or not a unit, the symbol. So I'll show you a bit later of that, about that. Right, so when electric current flows through a metal conductor, the charge carriers are electrons, right? Therefore, so the electrons carry the negative charge. Therefore, the flow of electric current corresponds to the flow of electrons. Yeah, I'm going to say a couple of very important points, and go think and ponder about it and read up a little bit for you to understand what we are saying here. So, therefore, the flow of electric current corresponds to the flow of electrons. That's very important. And so because electrons are negatively charged, electrons flowing from left to right, say for instance, you put a wire in front of you and you run a current from left to right through it, it would constitute a negative current flowing from left to right in the wire. Right, here's a little diagram. From left to right, the electrons are flowing from negative to positive. This current should also be described, it can also be described as a positive current flowing into the opposite direction from right to left. There you go, a positive current flowing to the opposite direction. It's a bit abstract, but go and think about it. So electric current is generally considered to flow in the opposite direction from the direction where electrons that carry it. So that is what we call conventional flow, and then the electric flow. So go and think about it, read about it a bit, and ask a bit of questions, and we can discuss that again. Right. Since the current can also be the flow of either positive or negative charges, or both, a convention for the direction of current, which is independent of the type of charge carriers, is needed. And there we go. So look at the black lines. There's a battery, negative pole on the right-hand side, positive on the left hand. So if you look at normal electron flow, the blue line, you see it will go from negative and around to positive. But the conventional flow is then in the opposite direction, from positive right around to negative. Okay. Right. Now we're going to talk about, we'll keep it now at conventional flow, current. And that flows through, if you imagine a pipe that comes from a dam we're going to talk about later. And now, conventional current flowing through a wire can be imagined to water flowing through a pipe. The magnitude or size of the current would correspond to the rate of water flowing through this pipe. Suitable rates for water flow could be milliliter per second. I see in the book they make another type of L as a cursive L, but that's wrong. For liter, you use the capital letter L. So, or liter per hour, kiloliter per hour, or megaliter per day. That's milliliters per day. Similarly, electrical current can then be expressed as milliamps per hour, amps per minute, kiloamps per hour, etc. It's legio. So here we've got a dam. We're going to show you the concept of voltage. We're going to talk about voltage, but keep this in mind. We've got a big dam here with a large capacity of a lot of water, billions of liters of water. And then you've got a sluice gate there, which is about 2 meters in diameter. And this guy goes and he opens the sluice gate and one hell of a lot of water gushes out there. And there we can talk more or less like megaliters per day. I would estimate this is more than 100 million liters per day coming out of that dam wall there. Then we've got a little dam here, maybe on a farm or whatever. This guy pumps water in from the borehole into the dam. It's got the fish in there, and there's a little weir of water going out there. So maybe this could be 10,000 liters per day, which is significantly smaller. A smaller dam, lower flow. And here we sit at the end in the garden. The water that trickles out of this large, or goes from the large dam, it goes to a reservoir, and then it goes to our pipes. And these pipes are like 10 millimeters in a diameter. And here we've got a Gardena sprayer, and we water our gardens. So you can see a much lower current flowing through a thinner pipe here. So you've got a big pipe there, smaller pipe, and a very small pipe. That also plays a big role. We talk about resistance. Now, electric potential includes current to flow. Now, so connecting a positive potential to one end of a copper rod or any other conductor and a negative potential to the other end will cause electrons to flow from negative to positive. That's the opposite of conventional flow, as we said. In other words, a conventional current will flow from the positive end of the conductor to the negative end. So electric positive difference is always measured between 2 points. And if you want to measure the electric potential of a car battery, you'll take a multimeter and you set it up on 20 volts and you put it on the electrodes over the terminals of the battery, and there you measure the electric potential. So the definition is the electric potential between 2 points is the amount of energy that it would take to move 1 unit of charge from the 1 point of lower potential of the circuit to the point of higher potential. And that's the amount of energy we're talking about as a standard as 1 volt. Okay. So there we go to the unit of volt. Energy is measured in joules and the charge is measured in coulombs. And therefore the unit of electric potential is known as joules per coulomb. So it's the energy per charge that flows through a conductor, and we know it as volt. So it's a combined 2 units that are combined into one. And the abbreviation for volt is capital letter V, which is represented as an E also. But when you do other calculations, people, we'll show you a bit later, but mostly we use V instead of E. The unit of voltage is named after Italian scientist Alessandro Volta. So electric potential difference is analogous to the pressure that a pump or a head of water creates in the water it pumps through the pipe. Obviously, the higher the pressure or voltage, the greater the quantity of water flowing through the pipe. So if you've got a very large battery compared to a pen light or a AAA battery, if you take a truck battery, 24 volt truck battery compared to a 1.5 volt AAA battery, obviously there's a big difference between the voltage from this big 24 volt truck battery, and this 1.45 volt AAA battery. So if you put this AAA battery into the truck and you put the terminals on this small battery, you'll never be able to start the starter of that lorry. So obviously you'll have to use a greater or bigger battery to start this motor. So if you take, for instance, other around, you've got a little torch using 2 AAA batteries in it, and you take this you take this truck battery and you take 2 terminals and you shove it into this torch. Obviously you're going to blow up that torch very quickly and very spectacularly. So you have to decide your application for where you're going to use voltage. That's very important. And also the size, thickness and length and whatever of your conductors. That's a specialized science on its own. So you got that concept. So here's just some random photos of batteries, 4.5 volt, 1.5, and here's your Duracell batteries. The one with the 2 terminals on top, that's a 9 volt. That's might be a 4.5 volt. There's the 2 little ones, 1.5, 1.5. Here's a car battery, 12 volt. Truck battery below left, 24 volt. You see the 24. Here's an electric car. I'm not sure what the voltage is there, but this is able to drive a car. And here's a battery bank to supply, well, they put solar panels up. And I see in America, they're building a mega battery open area that you can supply gigawatts with. Right, let's look at units and abbreviations. So we're looking at 1933 now. Okay, when measuring or calculating the amount of something, one needs to specify the unit of measurement. For example, if you weigh something and say it just weighs 10, it doesn't make sense. Is it 10 tons or whatever? 10 kilograms, 10 grams, or 10 milligrams. So you need to specify the unit that you measure anything with. So the units of measurement used in this course are the SI units. It's the SI, International System of Units, which were developed in France there about in the 1600s, and it's used throughout the Western world. And I couldn't resist putting America there. You know, they are they say America is metricizing inch by inch. So they are getting there. Excuse my sarcasm. Right, so each unit has a name like either volt or ampere or kilo, and they can be used in combination. You can say kilovolt or milliampere or kiloampere or whatever. It all depends on what your application or your needs is. So in this case, when you want to say 10 or ampere, you can say 10A instead of 10 ampere. You don't have to write it out there. If there's any questions, we can later on have a chat. Right, there are also standard prefixes which indicates quantities, 1,000, 1,000,000, or more. So for instance, milli is abbreviated as M, which means 1,000. So a milligram is 1,000th of a gram, or a millimeter is 1,000th of a meter. So that gives you an idea. So we use quite a lot of these in our everyday life. But this is a table in your book, but I would have liked to have 10 to the 0. That's just 10. 10 to the 0 is 10. But if you look here, let's go up here. 1,000 kilogram. There's a kilo. 1,000 kilogram is 10 to the 3 kilogram, or 1,000 volt is 10 to the 3 power. Mega is what we call a million. That's 10 to the 6. Now, giga is 1,000 million. We used to call it a billion, but now we call it a milliard. Or yeah. That's 10 to the 9. And then 1,000 billion, then I think now it's called a billion. 1,000 milliard, or 1,000 milliard is now called a billion. So there's 12 noughts, 3, 6, 9 and 12. There's 9 zeros, there's 6 zeros. So you just put the number of zeros between next to that. So it's 10 to the 12. So if you go smaller, now you take divided by 1,000, say that's 1 thousandth of a meter, it's 1 millimeter, so it's 1 times 10 to the minus 3. Excuse, this is 1 times 10 to the 6, and that's 1 times 10 to the 3. I should have actually put it there. If it's micro, then we can say 1 millionth of a gram or 1 millionth of a meter. That's 1 times 10 to the minus 6. And so we go to nano and pico, which is 10 to the 12. That's incredibly small. Right, let's look at the scientific notation. We can talk about this also a lot more in the future, because when you're going to do amateur radio things, you're going to use this much more. But you're also always welcome to have any questions, and we can do a couple of exercises. In the book, I think it's not sufficient enough. A scientific notation is a way of writing numbers so that they are too big, when they are too big or too small to be conveniently written in a decimal form. So the scientific notation, you'll always have it A times 10 to the B. So for instance, that previous one was A is, say for instance, like kilo, 1 times 10 to the third. So that's where you get A times 10 to the B. A times 10 is raised to the power of B, where the exponent is B, an integer, and the coefficient A can be any real number, which I'll show now here. Right, so let's look at A to the 10 of B. Here's just a normal one, the figure 2, which is, so if you take 10 to the 0, 10 to the 0 is actually 1. So 2 times 1 is actually 2. So take 300, it's 3 with 2 zeros behind it. So it's 3 times 10 to the 2, but 10 to the 2 is actually 100. So 3 times 100 is obviously 300. So if you look at this figure, that is, if you see that comma there, 4,321 point or comma 768. So if you convert that, it's 4,321,768 times 10 to the 3. So what you do is you'll see there is times to the 1, to the 2, and to the 3, 4,3 times 10 to the 3. So you have to take 10 to the 3 to accommodate for that. So that 4,300 is 4.321 times 10 to the 3. I'm sure you understand there. Minus 53,000. So you have to move the comma 1. Sorry, is daar iemand wat? Hallo? Okay. Kan ek aangaan?
Ja, Louis, ek dink is Amero het bygekom en sy mic was lewendig.
Okay.
Welkom Amero, gaan voort Louis.
Hallo Amero, kom alles nog mooi deur? Is daar enigiemand wat vra wil hê?
Ja, jy kom 100% deur.
Okay, goed. Right, let's look at, that is 7,720,000 million. So you have to move that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's 6.7 times 10 to the 9. And then 0.2, if you want to move it, use it right, then you have to put a comma there, then it's 2 times 10 to the minus 1. Right, so I suggest you look at these and some other examples, and I'm sure there are questions somewhere that we can work through, and we can look at and discuss between us if you have any problems with that. I know it's not easy to quickly now grasp it. Right, so that concludes. I want you to just, we've done scientific notation, and now I just want you to read 3.9, the number format. Ek wil net hoor, kan ons gou-gou deur die vrae werk, Henry?
Ja, seker, Louis, gaan voort.
Goed, so ek wil net miskien as die mense saam wil gesels of hulle Dan werk ons net deur die vrae. Ek sien ons tyd lyk goed. As hulle mikrofone wil unmute, dan gaan ons deur die vrae. Kan hulle maar net sê as hulle reg is?
Ja, Louis, weet jy wat, as die ou wat 'n vraag wil vra of wil antwoord, kan sy mic unmute. Ons gebruik baie keer die chat om die vrae te antwoord. So met ander woorde, die persoon wat die antwoord uitskree, sal dit in die chat skryf A, B of C of wat ook al die geval mag wees.
Alright, wat van ons doen dit as ons heeltemal klaar is? Dan gaan ek nou, ja, daai een spesifieke vraag wil ek net hanteer. Vraag nommer 4 van hierdie eerste hoofstuk. Okay, shall we continue then? Now go back to, I just want to, ek gaan uit met hierdie een. Then I want to get the next one up. Okay, jy moet net sê as jy hom sien. Okay, so it says share, screen window of tab. No. Chapter 4, right? Share. Okay, Henry, sien jy chapter 4, resistance and Ohm's law?
Ja, ek sien daai resistance and Ohm's law inderdaad.
Okay, shall we? This is a short one, and then you'll also see as I carry on the right-hand corner, it's page 53. I just want to confirm, Henry, are you going to send these by email to the candidates that they work through? Or?
Ons kan dit ook doen, ja, en dan is daar natuurlik die opname wat ons maak, the recording that we do, that is available, and we'll maybe make it available on some other platforms as well, so that it can be used right up to just before the exam.
No, this is free of charge and it's free for anybody to use. Okay, let's look at resistance. Right, so we've now established that electric current is the flow of charge and is caused by a potential difference between 2 points. That's voltage. Oh, voltage causes current. The greater the electric potential between 2 points joined by the conductor, the greater the current flowing through the conductor. That is partially true. The greater the electric potential between the 2 points joined by a conductor, the greater the current flowing. There must not be anything hindering this flow. And now we get to resistance. This is an ideal situation where there's no resistance. A pure conductor, which is in all aspects a model conductor which has no resistance. That is true then. Now, the size of current flowing is not only depends on the electric potential to the points, so current flow is also affected by the quality of the conductor, known as resistance. So a resistor is also a conductor, but the characteristics of a resistor is such that it limits the flow of current. And you're going to talk with, I think Henry is going to do resistance, and you'll see there's different types of resistors, and you want specific effects or reduction in current based on the resistance of a resistor. Right, so the resistance of a conductor or a resistor, which is a conductor, can be thought of as the extent to which it resists the flow of current. So the greater the resistance, the lower the current. Conversely, the lower the resistance, the greater the current. That's obvious. That will throw. It works two ways. Then, now George Ohm, he was a German physicist, discovered that the current through a conductor between 2 points is directly proportional. That's interesting, important to the potential difference across 2 points. That means that if a current through a conductor doubles, so the current doubles, the voltage will also double with the same amount. All right, so if the current through the conductor halves, the voltage also will halve in that conductor. That's very important to know and understand. So there's a direct relationship between current and voltage. So this relation can mathematically be expressed by indicating that the voltage across the conductor is equal to the current flowing through the conductor multiplied by some constant. And for that particular conductor, based on its characteristics, which in this case was called the resistance of the conductor by George Ohm. Right, so Ohm's law says voltage equals current times resistance, right? So now we're going to go to we'll go now to Ohm's law. So the unit of resistance is the ohm. The abbreviation for ohm is the Greek letter omega, which is written as I showed there, the omega symbol. And a conductor and this is now the standard conditions. A conductor has a resistance of 1 ohm if an application of a potential difference of 1 volt across a conductor causes a current of 1 ampere to flow through the conductor. So that's very important to understand also. A conductor has a resistance of 1 ohm even if an application of a potential difference of 1 volt across a conductor causes a current of 1 ampere to flow through a conductor. Right. So resistance can be thought of as the opposition to the flow of electric current through a conductor or electric circuit. So if you take that hose pipe where you were watering and you pinch that hose pipe, you've got a small plants there that you don't want to spray a lot of water on it, you'll damage the plants. You pinch your hose pipe and then you reduce your flow to that little plant there. And that's what resistance is. You reduce the flow. So there it is, our little 3 guys. We've got volt there in the green pushing the bottom of the other guy, and that's your current. And ohm is trying its best to prevent the guy called amp to go through the pipe there. So that's in a very, very simplified matter. The ohm is or resistance is explained. So if you think of a water flow, a thin pipe will exhibit a lot of resistance, while a thick pipe will exhibit a low resistance. And there's our pipe again there, our garden hose, and there's our dam wall with a lot of water. So obviously, if you look at that construction there, with these the building there with the water, there will be resistance inside that pipe, and which is eating away at the concrete. So there is resistance. Right, so let's look at symbols in mathematical equations. So certain symbols are commonly used to represent particular quantities. Example like volt or V is used to represent electric potential or voltage. R is used to represent resistance, and I represents electrical current. Now we're going to Ohm's law. So here we go. Using these symbols instead of their full names, Ohm's law can be written as V or voltage equals I or current times R or resistance. There we go. Where V is voltage, I is current, and R is resistance. So V voltage is current times resistance. So that applies to that dam wall. So the voltage or the current coming out there, or the voltage, is dependent on the stream coming out, multiplied by the resistance of the concrete to the water there. Therefore, if the current flowing through a conductor is known and the resistance of the conductor is also known, the electric potential or voltage across the conductor can be calculated. And that's the nice thing about Ohm's law. So let's look at the example. A current of 5 ampere, and you'll see it on page 54. A current of 5 ampere, is flowing through a conductor, and the resistance of the conductor is 2 ohms. So calculate the voltage flowing through the conductor. Thus, I equals 5 amps and R equals 2 ohms. So applying Ohm's law, V equals IR equals 2 times 5, and that is 10 volt. That is a very simple example. And in the exam, I don't know how it might have changed, but if you go sit an example, they test your knowledge about Ohm's law. They don't test your mathematics. So they're not gonna, probably not gonna give a current of 2,350 times so ampere, and the resistance is 430 ohms. It's not, obviously you can take a calculator with, so I remember mine was 12 divided by 4, you know, so you don't need a calculator, but they're not really testing your mathematics, they're testing your knowledge of Ohm's law, for example. But take your calculator along and be prepared. So there we go, and we now rearrange Ohm's law. We now know how to calculate voltage when the current and resistance is known. V equals IR. So using Ohm's law, either current or resistance can be calculated if the other quantities are known. So for using simple algebra, Ohm's law can be rearranged as follows. There we've got V equals IR. And if we divide the original equation by I, one gets V divided by I equals R, or I equals V divided by I. And you'll see that explanation there on page 54. Just get your math brain out again. So, and then dividing the original equation by R, one gets V over R equals I, or I equals V over R. So it shows you that you can either calculate R by using V and I, or you can calculate I by using V over R. So, and I want you to look at this sentence. I've picked up something there in your notes. Let's go back, and you'll see at the bottom of page 54. And I'm not going to tell you what the problem is with the sentence. So right at the bottom of page 54, it says, Ohm's law can be used to calculate the current flowing through a conductor, given the electrical potential across the conductor and the current flow through it. So there's something major wrong with that sentence, and I've crossed out the last part and the current flowing through it. So you can think for yourself what you need to put in there. Obviously, you'll have to say, and the resistance of it. So you can just make a correction there at the bottom. So read it through, and then you'll see what's wrong with that sentence. I'm not criticizing the writer, but I just thought important that you know that. So we talk about the triangle trick, and here we've got it, the triangle. It spells the word vir, the Afrikaanse word vir my ma, vir my pa. You make this triangle, and you've got voltage on top there, and current and resistance. So if you want to calculate voltage, V equals I times R. And if you want current, I equals V over R. Or if you want a resistance, it is V divided by I. So it's very simple. Just memorize it. Or just memorize the triangle with the word vir in, and then you've mastered Ohm's law using a very short Afrikaans word. Right, so there we end this chapter also, 1955. We made it by 5 minutes. This is about the only resistance joke that there is. Join the resistance in these priests that's sitting home. Right, thank you. That's it. So we can put it open, and we'll work through the questions if it's right there, Henry.
Yeah, no, 100%. Any questions?
Okay, I'm gonna go back. Yeah, okay, we'll do the questions first, and then we'll I wanna share this one. Share. Let me just go again back here, because we're gonna discuss the questions of chapter 3. Let me this is the window. Share. Okay, let me just go right down. We're going to. Okay, so is everybody ready? Then we'll go through the questions on page 51. But I just need your feedback. I'm going to ask the questions, then I want you to answer, and you mark it in your book, which is the right one. So the first question is, one of the following, so you can just unmute your microphones and participate. So one of the following materials is an electric insulator. So we've got A, which is silver, B, aluminium, C, copper, and D, mica. So which one is the insulator? Hello?
This is question 4 on the screen.
Okay, I'll get to that now, but just look in your books. Yeah, I want to discuss question 4 more intensely with you. Okay, so let's look at question 1. Just ignore the screen at the moment. So what's the answer for question 1?
Insulator.
Yeah, what is the which one of those is the insulator?
Plastic, rubber. I don't have that in front of me. Just
Are you on page 51 of your notes?
D.
Okay, I've heard D. Yeah, that's correct. Mica. All right. Is everybody happy there with that? Can you mark it there on your notes? Okay. One of the following. Sorry. Yeah, I like. You know, I like sitting in a classroom.
Yeah, page 59. Where are we?
No, 51. 51.
Okay.
51. Okay. Question 2. One of the following is an electrical conductor. A, mica, B, ceramic, C, plastic, and D, copper. What would you say there?
Copper.
Okay, yeah, you're right there. Who said copper? Can I just get your name?
Janku.
Oh, Janku. Okay, right. Okay, the unit of electrical potential is ampere or amp or voltaire or volt.
A ampere.
Electrical potential.
Oh, volt. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll say that current. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're going to skip 4 now first, and then we'll carry on and we'll go back to 4. Right. A voltage of 20,000 volt could be expressed as 20 microvolt, 20 millivolt, 20 kilovolt, or 20 megavolt. What would you say is the answer there?
$20 kilovolts.
That's correct. Yeah. Okay. All right. Right, the charge carriers in solid copper that allows it to conduct electricity are, first off, think of charge carriers and what I talked about there. First off, positively charged copper ions, negatively charged copper ions, positively charged electrons, or negatively charged electrons. I think it's quite obvious. So what do you say? Shall we go back to there where oh no, that's the other one. Charge. Okay. Current. Charge carriers. You'll see there's 6 charge carriers are particles that carry charge in electrical circuits. These charge carriers are carried by moving electrons. So what would you say is the answer there?
Can you repeat the question, please?
All right, question 6. You got it there on page 52? Do you have it there?
No.
Oh, God. Okay. The charge
I don't have
carrier.
it open.
Okay, right, no problem. But okay, look, here on the screen, you'll say you'll see the charge carriers in solid copper, that's a metal, that allows it to conduct electricity are positively charged ions, negatively charged copper ions, positively charged electrons, that's impossible, or negatively charged electrons. So let's look at the screen I showed you. Where am I now? In electrical circuits, these charge carriers are carried by moving electrons in a wire. And what is the charge of an electron?
A negative.
I'll say, you're getting close. So would you say negatively charged electrons?
Yeah.
Are you happy with that? Yeah. So it's 6D. So conventional current flows in the same direction as electrons are moving, or in the opposite direction of the flow of electrons. Let's ignore the others. So conventional current flows or A, in the same direction as electrons, or in the opposite direction as electrons?
Opposite.
Opposite, all right. So that is 7B. Then 8. As an electric current always consists of a flow of electrons, neutrons, protons, or charge.
Electrons.
That's correct, yeah. Right, so now last one here. Electricity is obtained from splitting atoms into protons or neutrons, converting other forms of an energy. That could be nuclear energy or hydroelectricity or hydraulic energy into electricity, electricity plants, or electric blankets. That's also obvious. Which one would you say? A, B, C, or D? If you think of a nuclear plant or a dam with a big generator, so you've got one form of energy, potential energy or nuclear energy, which you convert into electricity. So what are you doing? You're converting one form of energy into another form. So it's converting other forms of energy into electricity. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope you're there at question 4. And I want you to, okay, you obviously get the recording, but work through this one. And I'm just going to explain this question. A current of 15 microampere is equivalent to 1,5 times 10 to the minus 5, or 15 times 10 to the minus 5, 1,5 times 10 to the 6, or 15 times 10 to the 6. So let's look at 15 microampere is equivalent. Do you see it there on the screen? So 15 microampere is equivalent to 15 times 10 to the minus 6 ampere. But this is not right. The notation is not right. You want it in the form of 1,5 times 10 to the something. Eh? So we adjust first the 15 to a scientific notation. So 15 is 1,5 times 10 to the 1. So it's 1,5 times 10 is 15. Eh? You agree? So then you multiply that with 10 to the minus 6. So 15 times 10 to the minus 6 is equivalent to 1,5 times 10 to the 1 times 10 to the minus 6. I'm sure you understand that. So then you just simplify your exponents, which is 1,5 times 10 to the 1 plus minus 6. And that gives you 1 plus minus 6 gives you minus 5. So that gives you 1,5 times 10 to the minus 5. So that's the answer to that question. And take a look at it. And if you look also at the recording and see if you understand it. If you don't, when we talk again, I think there's a session that is open for all the lecturers. So then just the last, if you look at page 55 and 56, there's eight questions regarding resistance. Let me just close that. I don't have a slide for that. Okay, so let's look at the questions on Ohm's law and so on. So the opposition to the flow of current in a circuit is called resistance, inductance, emission, or capacitance. We haven't talked about inductance, emission, or capacitance. So obviously the answer would be
Resistance.
Resistance, I'll say. Right, so next up, a current of a current is hulle nog daar. Okay, there we go. Right, thank you. Henry, kan julle hoor my nog, nee?
Ja.
Okay. Right, there's
Ja,
a question.
yeah.
Ag, dankie. There's a current that flows through a 100 ohm resistor, and that's 120 milliamperes. Now, the first problem that we sit with, we don't have a problem with the resistance, that's 100 ohm. But we've got milliampere. That's so 1 milliampere. Sorry? Excuse me. Yeah. So I just want to explain. Yes, 100% reg. So 1 milliampere is 1,000th of an ampere. This is 120 milliamperes. That's 0.12 ampere. So you have to convert that to ampere. So obviously 0.12 ampere. So if you take Ohm's law, V equals IR, that equals 100 times 0.12. And then what is the answer there? So you've got 100 times 0.12. So what you do is you just move the decimal 2 times to the right. So what do you get then there? Either 120, 8.33, 833.3 or 12.
12 volts.
There you go. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, 12 volts. Right, so just do that quick multiplication. So here's also an interesting one. The resistance value of 1,200 ohms can be expressed as. So it must be some kind of kilo ohm. Because the thousands of an ohm, what thousands of an ohm, what would you say?
It's B actually.
1.2 kilo ohms.
That's correct. That's B. Okay, then we can move up a bit. Right. So, how can the current be calculated when the voltage and resistance in the DC circuit are known? So you want I.
What is these E's? Because isn't
that's
it
actually
V?
Yeah. You see, there they go. E is actually the same as V. So
Okay.
E is also
So it's
voltage.
D.
So yeah, sorry.
So it's probably 4D.
Just check again.
Fierce
So
E. Oh, sorry, it's divided.
Yeah,
it's A.
A, you're right. Yeah, I is current divided by resistance. Right. Okay. Number 5, a 12-volt battery supplies a current of 250 milliampere. Here we got the same unit again, same as in question 2.
Open to F5.
What is the? Yeah. Are you going to do the calculation there? So you've got R, you don't have R, but you have V and you've got I. Yeah.
B. Okay.
What do you get there?
I get 3 ohms.
Just take 12 volt divided by 0.25 ampere.
And then I get 3. C. Why C?
Yeah, you're on the right track. 12 divided by 0.25.
Well, what's a quarter of 12?
No, it's not. No, it's not the multiplied by 12. It's not 0.25 multiplied by 12. It's 12 divided by 0.25.
Okay.
Yeah,
Then it's 48.
that's
Oh,
correct. Yeah. Yeah, you must just, yeah. Right. Let's look. I just checked my calculation also. For a moment, there was some hesitation in my heart here. But
Daar is 'n trickie in want dis maklik om hulle te maal, but it's divided.
Yeah, it's divided. Yeah, yeah.
You're looking for the
So 12
resistance.
mol, yeah, so 12 mol 0.25. This is a quart, this 3. Yeah, this all in your phone. I say 3 ohms, but you divide there. Right. So right, number 6. Thank you, Indri. Yeah.
And now you're looking for the I. Okay.
That's
So
correct.
again,
Let's see how it goes there. Right.
VIR. So I on R. So V times R.
25 amps.
Just say again. So V divided by R.
470. I get D.
D, yeah.
6D.
Yeah, 6D. But I see there's a little mistake there in the book. It's if you divide it and you get 0.255. So we're not splitting hairs, but it should be 0.26.
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough.
Something to say into the SRO for rectification on the next version.
We'll go to the annual general meeting.
I mean, that other sentence you also mentioned, the same thing for that one as well.
Yeah.
It's more technicalities.
Yeah, no, we'll get feedback to them. Right, so how can the voltage across a resistor be calculated? When the resistance of and current flowing through the resistor are known. All right, so use Ohm's law again, V equals. So if you use your triangle, your magic triangle, VIR. V equals?
Infrared.
MOR.
Infrared, yes, you're right there. Number C, okay. Right, last question there. The law that relates to current flowing through a conductor to the electric potential applied to the conductor is known as. It's very easy. The other Kirchhoffs we haven't done yet. So it can be only we talked about her ohm.
The Ohm's law.
Yeah.
D for delta.
Delta. Ohm's law. Daar's hy. Okay, so that's all for the evening. Thank you very much for listening. Oh, sorry?
Ja, ek sê dit is so inderdaad.
Yeah, so just a small message from my side. This is not difficult. It's going to get more difficult, but ham radio is very interesting and so on. But this is self-study, all out and out. Self-study, motivation. How motivated am I to get this license? And the other thing is the creativity of you looking for more information and where to look for information. When you get a code word to go, and I'm talking about the bands theory, go look up these things. Because you want to become a radio ham, you need to be creative, and you need to have you need to be hungry for knowledge. You can't just pass this thing just by working through questions. You'll have to dig a bit more deeper, and that's where self-study comes in quite a lot. Okay, so thank you for listening. Appreciate it. Have a good evening. Wil jy nog
Thank you.
gesels, Henry?
Thank you so much.
Nog iemand nog vrae?
If everybody, I mean, I'll send it on the group as well. If they
Yeah.
can maybe have a calculator, you don't need a computer, but having a calculator, scientific calculator at hand for next week would be handy. You can also use the one that comes on your smartphone. It will also work. And then that triangle, you've got to know that because the calculation for power is also used with a triangle. And if you really know that and you're familiar with it, it makes it so much easier. You don't have to think, you just write it down. So that's basically my advice. And yeah, next week, I can't wait. I had to really restrain myself because this is my food. This is my forte. So I had to really restrain myself not to shut out the answers.
Ah.
Almere, sê ek, ja, Piek. Kyk en Janko, sê ek. Okay. Thank you very much, Henry.
Right, ek gaan die opname stop, né?
Ja,
Ja.
okay.
Baie dankie Louis, dankie Henry. Lekker aand vir julle almal hoor.
Dankie Almere. Louis, gaan jy